I don't know if you can hear the water falling, but it got warm all of a sudden and the snow is melting. As you may know, I have a FabFours Stubby Front Bumper, but I didn't like the way the FabFours rear bumper looks, so I bought a JCR Crusader rear bumper. Hopefully it matches. I'm going to install it and you let me know if you think it does or not. Welcome to the Never Ending Weekend. Like all of my other install videos, we're not going to do like an in-depth walkthrough. I'm just going to tell you some things that I find that might be interesting or some problems I run into. First things first, we take off the rear tire and then we remove the wiring harness from both sides, which is just clipped in, and also this bolt here from both sides. Once that's done, we remove the tow hooks and then lift off the bumper. And just like the front bumper, once you take all the bolts off, it'll feel a little loose, but it'll hang on there. So you can take it off. You can completely take out the bolts and not worry about it falling off. You know what? It's surprisingly light. Okay, now that we have the rear bumper off, the stock bumper, it's just a matter of removing the existing wiring harness for the parking sensors, as well as the light for the license plate, and then popping out the parking sensors, and then taking that wiring harness and transferring it to the new bumper. You're gonna have to remove this plate as well to access the sensors. And remember to keep track of left and right because these ends are different for each side. Now the new bumper is just as simple as putting the grommets that were included in the kit in the holes for the sensors. Put in the sensors using some silicone and making sure that the wiring harness is the right way. I put a piece of tape on it so I'd remember. Hey, the grommets are too small, man. What the heck? Okay, so problem number one. These supply grommets are way too small for the holes. So I don't know what that's about. They did provide these plugs, I'm assuming, just in case you don't have parking sensors. No, that's not what that's for. Actually, I don't know what that's for. But the grommets are too small. So it finally came. JCR was nice enough to immediately send this in a trackable package to me with the new grommets. Would have been great if it was included in the first place, but second best. It was shipped out to me right away. So let's see what we have here. We have 4 grommets, and unlike these ones that fall right through the hole, these are the right size. So we'll put them in, put in the sensors, and then take it from there. I have these Baja Design Squadron Sport lights that I was saving to put into this bumper, so we'll install those now. Stickers for the collection. I won't likely be needing a lot of this wire loom. To get this light situated perfectly centered in the hole cutout, number one, I had to make the bracket, so the flat parts in the front, to make it as forward as possible. It's still quite a bit of space in between the bumper and the light, but I think that works. But also to raise it high enough because it was pretty low on here. And I couldn't raise it any higher. It was kind of not centered in the hole. So I added a bunch of spare washers I had. I know you can see this green rubber washer that I squeezed to death. That's what I had on hand. Hopefully it'll stay in place. I torqued it all down and it looks like it's pretty centered now. In the instruction, when you're putting in these parking sensors into the grommets, they ask you to put some RTV silicone. I had some regular silicone, but after doing some research, the RTV is a little bit stronger bonding, so decided to go out to the local hardware store and grab me a tube. And after pasting those into the grommets, after that is to figure out the wiring for the upfitter switch. Make sure you clean the sensor as well, because it's the grommets and the RTV silicone that's holding it in. There's no clips. So far the bumper installation has been pretty straightforward besides the grommets, but now it's really wiring up those rear fog lights. There doesn't seem to be a really perfect solution to this. The aux cable that they have in the rear that Bronco put in, kind of put it in an inconvenient place, and I don't know why exactly they did that, but I was thinking about ganging up the rear fog lights with the front ones on the same upfitter switch through the frame rail, but it's not as flexible as keeping it on separate switches, so I'm going to have to take off some panels here, find the auxiliary switch, and then wire them through the Bronco, and I'll show you what I got to do. So luckily all these panels come off without tools. They're all just kind of pop pins. So first I pry off this center piece here. Then there's a small piece behind the pillar frame. Then I start popping off this whole panel here, which is stuck. Bottom edge is stuck under this, so maybe I might have to take this off, but I'm hoping not. Then I have to remove this front door side trim piece to open up this to release the side of the rear panel. Make sure that you disconnect these wires as you're pulling the panel apart. Yeah, so let's get into it. I really should get a panel pry tool. I thought it was going to be around here somewhere, but it's actually way down there near the front. I don't know if you can see that really well, but it's that one white wire right there that's pretty much at the bottom of the B pillar. So this is the wiring harness that came with the lights, and just like the front bumper lights, I don't need the fuse, I don't need the connection to the battery or the switch right here. All I need is the connections to the light. So I'm just gonna snip those off. And then hopefully they're long enough to reach that cable near the front. To get the cable from the inside of the car to the bumper without it obviously needing to pass through the body somewhere, I'm going to try to pass it through one of these holes. I'm going to take off this piece, which is basically two bolts and four of these holding pins, which you recognize from the bottom of the wheel wells, and then drop the wire straight down here and then towards the bumper. And then I'll mount up the bumper and wire things up, and hopefully it all works. These things are so finicky, can't put any pressure on them. There you go. So I just finished tearing up the back, and I think I found a path for the cable. I did have to remove the floor panel. That's just simply removing those tie down points in each corner. It's pretty simple, and I have three options for the path. I've discovered that they separate the inside and the outside body interior with foam, I guess to seal up any air or noise or probably moisture. If I can move the cable behind this, I can bring it in through here, and I found a path to let it come out of that hole right there, which is really for the pin. The pin would probably take up half that hole, and I would need to pass through the cable through that, but it would be very tight, and the pin moving might be not ideal for a wire location, but it would be hidden under that panel, and then I would drop it down here. Ideally, I'd be able to pass it through here and then out through the bottom, but like I said, there's a layer of foam right here that separates the external cavity and the internal one. The second choice is to actually drill a new hole here and pass the wire through that way. And then the third option is I found this. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but it passes through the bottom of the Bronco. So I would make a slit here and pass the cable through and down here. Again, not ideal because the cable will be running under the floorboard, and the floor panel kind of being on top and rubbing it might not be ideal. I might put a bit of foam tape there or something to just alleviate the pressure a bit, but I think out of the three options, that's the easiest and best one. So I'm going to try wiring that all up right now, and I'll show you the results. Now we add on these attachment brackets. Just use the supply bolts, 3 of them. And then we're ready to attach the bumper. Put it on loosely for now because you got to measure the height of this and the centering of the bumper itself. Okay, you're going to need 2 people to put this on.
To think about the girl you love and hold her tight, so happy together.
So we're going from aux switch 4, which is the brown wire, this one, and the B2 line is the brown white wire, which is in here, and that will take you to inside the footwell of the passenger side. So there's the brown white wire right there, and then for some reason they really squeezed up the orange white wire that goes to the rear quarter panel way up there, and that will take you to the rear quarter panel wire where we're going to hook up the lights. They make it so hard to get in there that either they're assuming you're going to take all the panels off to untape all the wire looms, or they assemble it and they just don't care how you're going to get to it. Okay, moment of truth. Strung up to auxiliary 4 switch. I'm going to turn it on now. Nice. It's freezing outside. Just noticed this on the trim piece is some coordinates, Easter egg I guess, somewhere near Johnson Valley. I think it's called Lucerne Valley in California. If anyone's from around there, send me a photo. So wiring's finally done. That was a pain to try to do. I didn't have enough space to use the typical butt connector, so I went to the hardware store and got these disconnects. They didn't have any waterproof ones, so I got some heat shrink to go along with it. It was very, very convoluted to get that done, but now that it is, I just get the Bronco put together again, and that will be it. Just a quick word of caution when you're putting these back on. If you're ever taking off this bottom panel, you're supposed to take this strip off first, or a lot of the tutorial says take this strip off first. So the assumption is when you're putting everything back together, it's the last thing that goes down, but it fits underneath this panel, so it's way easier if this goes on first before this. And in a rush pulling these off, I don't know if it's because it's cold and the plastic's brittle, or I was just in a rush pulling these off, I managed to break off every one of the tabs on each one of these. So keep that in mind. They bend forward so that when you do take this off, you pull the top off, and then make sure you pull it backwards, or you're just gonna end up breaking every one of these. So everything is in place, all the hardware. I put in the nuts for these 2 button head bolts. I'm going to plug in these 2 pull harnesses on either side. I've added the 13-inch bolt through the frame rail. That's this right here. Also did these that go through the factory tow hook mounting points. Those were very difficult to get in. I don't know if it's because I had the hitch receiver, but those tow hook bolts were very hard to line up. But after a lot of pulling and heaving, I got them in. This is the factory license plate light harness. This is the factory license plate light. I don't know where to put the license plate. I don't know if I want to wire this all up to do it in the rear tire. There's some brackets that are on the rear tire and some other aftermarket brackets that I don't really like that much. So I'm going to try an experiment with some magnets, and maybe I'll do a short video later about if that worked or not. Another issue, the way the electrical harness plug is attached to the frame here, and the way the bumper is, there's no space to get this part of it underneath to hook in there. So I was able to take off the, there's a clip here that you just had to pull the clip away from that was hooked on there. And then I'll just cable tie these. Oh, my fingers are freezing. It's all tightened up. For you, those of you who are a little bit more eagle-eyed or more attentive, you'll notice that I'm putting on this hammer-built spare tire carrier reinforcement. You can look at that video right there, and I'm going to put on some Mack tracks on it too, because I've seen a lot of them with the spare jerry can, but none with the Max tracks. So I'm going to put that Max tracks on there. So check out that video. Otherwise, what do you think? Do you think it matches the front bumper? There's the FabFours Stubby Front Bumper. Notice the angles and the lines. And this is the Crusader JCR rear bumper. I think they match pretty good. The lines, the angles, matches pretty good. This is a foothold if you ever want to climb up, if you have a roof rack. So let me know what you think, if it's a good match or not. Until then, have a great weekend, everyone.